thank you very much for joining our OT SolEx Partners SolEx Expo for this year. Some familiar faces already in the room, and some returns from last year. That's fantastic. To kick off the expo this year, it's Cassia. So if you're not familiar with Cassia, we are a OpenText Solution Extension partner and OpenText technology partner based in Ottawa, Canada. And today we're going to be showcasing our records management module called RDA, which is the Records Disposition Approval module. And today presenting is one of our partners, Rob Burnet, who is our records management guru. So Rob, I'm going to give it over to you just for a quick introduction, and we'll get right into it. We're going to save questions and answers to the end of the presentation. And of course, if you have any questions or concerns or any feedback after the exhibition, please reach out to myself. I'll be putting contact information and some details into the chat window as we go. And you can ask the questions at the end. You can put them in chat, or you can just put your hand up and we'll go through any questions as well. So thanks again for joining us this morning. And Rob, I'll hand it over to yourself.
Thanks, Sean. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this demo. My name is Rob Burnet. I'm a principal partner here at Cassia Content Management, as well as the product manager for Records Disposition Approvals, or what we call RDA module. Just a little bit of background about myself and kind of the genesis of where this tool is coming from. So I am a former OpenText professional services consultant that I focused in on records management deployments in Content Server. So that was a very long time ago. That was back between 2000 and 2005, but my entire career has been focused around Content Server implementation, specifically around implementing records management systems. So during my experience, I saw a need where we could help organizations streamline their records disposition processes to make it more user-friendly for the end users who are doing the approvals, and to help the records managers process these records a little bit quicker. Because often I found with my clients, one, it was hard to get the end users to sign off because there was a lot of clicking involved, or you had to write some complicated workflows or web reports. And then once they were doing that, then you always had to kind of somehow reconcile that back with Content Server. So that's the genesis of RDA. Is we wanted a fully integrated disposition approval process in Content Server, and that is what we will be demoing today. I always give this disclaimer. Because of my numerous clients and my history, I will call Content Server by various names. If you're old school, I may drop into LiveLink. If you work for the Canadian government, I may call it GC Docs, but in all cases, we're referring to Content Server. I'll try to catch myself. Okay, so let's jump into the demo and talk about how RDA can help you facilitate your disposition processes. Okay, so I'm first going to set the stage of what the information that we're going to be working with in order to perform our disposition approvals. I'm also going to take a good chunk of this time walking through you the manual process of creating what we call RDA approval packages. And at the end, I'm going to show you how we can completely automate that process for you. I always find that if I jump into the automation, everything happens behind the scenes, and you don't understand the kind of the control that you would have over it if you wanted to do it manually. So bear with me as we step through all the processes manually, and then we'll show you the fun stuff where we can do it in a couple of clicks. Okay, so first off, what's the information model that we're working with? So in my demo area, I'm going to have one department for my finance. Under finance, I'm going to have two business units for accounts payable and accounts receivable. Now, the structures within these two are pretty much the same. We divide it out based on organization, and within each organization, we have our documents. And in these examples, I have both physical and electronic documents. But throughout this structure, I'm also capturing metadata. So if we take a look at the metadata that I'm capturing down the folder structure, we'll see that we are capturing the company name, capturing the department. So I know this contract is coming from accounts payable. And I also have a disposition approvals group. And I've identified a primary and secondary approver. And these are both groups. So I have a role group for my accounts payable approvers, and then a larger group for my finance controller. So that's the information model that we're going to be working with today. So let's jump now into the first step of what you need to do. So like all first steps in running your disposition processes is that you need to start a disposition search. So we'll go to the dispositions area. And so again, this is all out of the box functionality right now. I have preset up a finance disposition search. Let me just clear out my snapshots here so we can start fresh. And I am going to duplicate a tab and go into my RDA workspace for a moment, get that ready. There we go, delete those. Okay, so this snapshot here is going to be running on my finance department. I need to turn this off to show you the magic first. And now when I'm just going to start my disposition search as normal, and we should get a bunch of records back momentarily. There we go. So we have 121 objects returned in our snapshot. And as you see, this is the standard out-of-the-box interface for your disposition search results. Now, in this disposition search, because I ran it at the finance level, we're getting both accounts payable and accounts receivable records back in this search result. And those require two different sign-offs. So the accounts payable records need to go to an accounts payable approver, and accounts receivable needs to go into the accounts receivable approver. So what we're going to do next is we're going to utilize RDA to slice and dice this work package so that we can split it up into two approval packages. And at the end, we're able to reconcile the approvals from those two approval packages into your disposition search for you to process it. So it's at this point, we're going to be handing it off to the RDA tool. So as I got here earlier, so you have a RDA admin workspace. This is where the records manager would come in to build their RDA work packages manually, to check on the status of the packages, as well as to process the approvals or rejected items that they have received back. So the first thing I'm going to do is add new over here on the right. I'm going to choose my disposition, and we're going to call this Finance Fin AP Disposition Approval Package. And I'm going to choose my disposition search, and I only have one snapshot in there, so I'm just going to choose that one and click Create. So what RDA is doing at this point is we pointed it to your disposition search and your snapshot, and we're going to suck in all 121 records into this approval package. So before we get down to looking at the records and slicing it up, let's talk about the top portion of the screen. So here we see we're linking to the disposition and snapshot that we're using. The workflow status is in a pending state because we have not sent this out. Now in RDA, we do use the word workflow. We are not using content server workflows. This is just all database driven. We see that we have 121 items in report, and we haven't excluded any yet. And there's our name, and we have the number of days to complete. So I have a default configuration that each approver receives 30 days to submit their approvals on these records, and that can be changed. Below we have instructions. These instructions are sent along with your approval package so that the individuals who are performing the approval can have a clear understanding of what they need to do. And so in this example, I'm going to be linking to my retention policy and my classification manual, as well as putting a contact information for my record staff if they need to get a hold of them. And this box supports something called Markdown, which is basically a simple way of doing HTML formatting for the text. So for example, over here, a couple of asterisks around 30 days will make it bold. The single asterisk with a bracket and a link afterwards creates the hyperlink, and underscores around it will create an italic. Next, we have a security override. So this is something that we have configured to be enabled in a system. You don't have to have this on if you don't want to. But what this feature allows you to do is it ensures you that the individuals who are going to be performing the approvals have at least C and C contents on the records themselves. So why is that important? Well, oftentimes organizations will put potentially a legal approver at the very end of their process. They want just one last sanity check to make sure that there's no outstanding litigation cases for those records. And so that litigation approver needs to be able to approve those records. Now, that litigation approver, from a day-to-day business operations perspective, doesn't necessarily need to have access to every single corporate record in your content server. If you did do that, if they had access to at minimum CC contents, when they perform their searches, they're going to get a lot of irrelevant information back that they don't need to use in their day-to-day job. So typically, the permission model that you use is it's more restrictive to the area where the legal team is working, and so that when the objects come up for their approval, we need to ensure that they're able to actually see them to check the metadata or look at the contents of the document. Now, if you're using out-of-the-box content server disposition approval process, there will be no indication to those legal approvers that there are records that they can't see. It just behaves like normal content server. If I sent 10 records to my legal team to approve and they didn't have access to 4 because of their permissions, it looks like they only have 6 objects to approve. There's zero indication that there was a batch that they don't have access to, and therefore they can't approve. So this feature allows you to temporarily grant those, whoever is the current approver, the CC contents on those objects. So when they become active as an approver, we give them CC contents. When they complete their approval, we'll restore their permissions back to the way it was, which could be no permissions whatsoever. So this ensures that all your approvers can see all the records that you're sending them out to them for approver. Okay, next up is our approver. So RDA supports 1 to 1001. Really, there's no limit to the number of approvers that you can have for a package. With out-of-the-box content server disposition approvers, for a basic approval process, it'll support 2. If you need more than 2, you're going to need to build a traditional content server workflow and incorporate disposition steps into that workflow. So with RDA, it's much simpler. You just need to choose your disposition approvers. So we also incorporate a dynamic lookup. So you just start typing the username and the matching users will pop up. So there's no more clicking on that little face and then looking for the user and selecting that user. So you just dynamically look it up. You can choose the users. We can do our AP group here if we want. Let's choose that one. And we have our fin controller. There we go. So I basically just configured this RDA package to have 3 levels of approvers. User 1 or user 02 is the first approver, and then the group for AP, and then the group for the finance controller. Now the order of these matters. So if you've messed up the order, you can simply drag or drop these things around to ensure that you've got the proper order. Now, for simplicity's sakes and for time-wise, I'm not going to go through a 3-step process on this. I'm just going to set it up for a single approver, but knowing that the steps for everyone else is basically the same. The user interface is going to be the same as well. So I will go ahead and remove user 02 and my finance controller. We have something called conditioner approvers. We don't have that set up in this demo just for time sakes as well. But basically, if you have a certain set of classifications that you deem to be potentially a higher risk, or that you want additional levels of approvers on, you can configure that. And if RDA finds that classification in the records that are in your package, it'll split it up into, it'll automatically attach the additional approver to the work package for you. Auto processing approved items, we're going to leave this as a no, so we don't delete all of our records. But basically what this will allow you to do, if you have set it up for yes, is that when you receive your approvers and approvals back, anything that has been approved will automatically go through the disposition action that is configured for that record on the RSI that got returned. So again, we're going to leave that as no. The purpose of that function actually came from a customer request. They was a very large organization in the United States, something like over 25,000 users, but they only had a couple of records managers. So they didn't have the ability to go through and manually process all of these records. So what happens here is when they enable this feature, anything that gets approved gets automatically deleted, and any exceptions or rejections get flagged for them to go into and then deal with it at that part. So it really automates their disposition process, especially when you take a look at how we're going to automatically build and initiate these packages at the end of the demo. Okay, and the last two settings here is our button labels. So dispositions, as you probably know, don't always mean delete. They could mean moving it to an archive or simply changing the status. So RDA allows you to modify the interface for an approver to really reflect what they're clicking approve or reject for. Because if it was just generic and saying approve or reject, well, are they aware that they are approving for deletion, or are they aware that they're approving for archive? So you can customize these buttons per package so that the end users are very, very clear on when they click approve what they are doing with that record. So I have some default values for in your approve for destruction, reject, and extend. And so I will just customize the reject button. I will just say reject deletion and leave the default. Actually, no, let's do this. Approve delete. So I'll customize those two and I'll save it. Okay, so I've saved those settings, and now we're going to get down into the 121 objects that got returned from our disposition search. So if you recall, not all of those go to the same approvers. Out of those 121, some go to account payable, some goes to account receivable. So we need to slice this package up. And so there's a couple of ways we could do it. We could, go through these records and see, okay, well, I'm going to click on that one and exclude it. But the real power of this is the facets on the left-hand side. Because of the metadata that I've captured on my records, I'm able to look at the department that these objects are coming from and quickly pull out the ones that I don't want in this package. So up top, you notice that I've called it my accounts payable package, and I've sent it to my accounts payable approvers. So what I want to do is remove my accounts receivable records from this package. So I'll use the filter on the left-hand side to filter just on my accounts receivable records. And then I will select all. RDA knows that you have more than what you're displaying on this page, and so I can select them across all pages, and then I'm going to exclude it. And so this pulls those items out of this RDA work package. And so what is left is just the 76 objects that are for the accounts payable. And that is basically what we can do. I mean, there are additional filters, right? Maybe your physical objects need to go to a different approver or have someone else, so you could pull those out and build a different package for them if you wanted. So there, anything over here, you really can slice and dice this package as you see fit. And these facets on the left-hand side are dynamically built. So traditional content server facets, if you're familiar with that functionality, you have to build a facet tree, you have to build a facet and add it to the tree, then you have to tell content server where that facet tree should be displayed. None of that applies for RDA. These facets are all dynamically built based on the metadata that it is finding on your records. Okay, so what we have now, we've got a package with all of our configuration settings going to one group for approving. I've customized the buttons and I've restricted my records to my 76 for accounts payable. So I'll leave it at that and I will send that item out for sign off. So I click the initiate sign off process and it moves from my pending over to my initiated tab. And we see that there's 76 objects, it's been initiated, and it is sitting with my AP RDA approvers group. So before I log in as an approver, I just want to show you what happens if we build a secondary work package on the same disposition search. So I'll click on add new, and I've only had one copy this morning. So what is the department I am using? So this was AP. So we're going to build a package for accounts receivable. So we'll add new. This is an AR disposition package. We're going to choose the exact same disposition and the exact same snapshot and click create. And so come back to the same page for building out your package. But if you notice down on the bottom here, the report items doesn't say 121, is now 45, and there's 76 that have automatically been included. So that's because those 76 are already out in a RDA work package. So when we click on that tab, we'll see that those items are excluded because they are in this package over here. So RDA prevents you from sending out the same records to different users that would potentially get a conflict in your approval. So I won't initiate this just to save time. But one other thing I do want to show you is a neat little feature that we built into this. Standard disposition searches for Content Server. If you ran a disposition search in the same area, you would get 121 objects, even though you've sent those 121 objects out to approval already, because Content Server isn't aware that these objects have already been sent out for review. But with RDA installed, I'm going to go back up here, check our snapshots. So again, if we were running traditional Content Server approval, I run a second snapshot, I'm getting 121 objects approved. But with RDA, we built in logic to identify which objects you have already sent out for approval. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to load in a new document into my demo area. Finance. And we'll do Acme Corp, and I am going to drag in just one more document in here. And now we see that we have a document added to the package build. So we built our packages. I've now run added a new document. Now, if I run a disposition search, I will not get 121 objects. I should get just one. So I'm talking through this just to give the index engines a little bit of time to recognize that it's there. But where this will come important is your disposition review packages often take a significant amount of time. If you run your package review, your disposition approval on a quarterly basis, sometimes it takes longer than a quarter to get all your approvals back and get those records processed through it. So if you were just using traditional content server and you reran that disposition search in the second quarter, you're going to be getting records back that you've already got approvals on, or that you're about to process, or were already got rejected. So it's going to be a lot of duplications, and you're going to have to filter that out somehow, because you're not getting net new objects that just came up for disposition. So if I've stalled long enough and start my search, I should see that I get one item back. And we will just do a 5-second refresh, and there we go. We get one item back, and if we take a look at it, that is the document after the package build. So with RDA, you can run this on a quarterly basis and always ensure you're getting net new objects that are for approval. Now, anything that came back that was rejected and processed, they will come up if they do meet your disposition search criteria, but at least this shows you that if you have an ongoing review process, you're not going to get your duplicates. Okay, so next step. So we have built the package as a records manager. We've initiated it, our AP, out to our finance approver. Let's log in as a approver for these records and take a look at what that process looks like. So I will log out. We will log in as approver 1. And approver 1 will have received, because approver 1 is part of that approver group, will receive an email informing them that they have a disposition approval to work on. Additionally, they could come in here in Content Server under their personal menu and choose the records disposition approvals, and they will have a link to the package that they need to work on. And you can see that they have a due date in October 14th, and they have 76 objects to approve. So when I click on that as the approver, the first thing that we'll see when we get in there is we're going to get a message informing us that we are not the only person that this package has been sent to, because it's been sent to a group, and you could potentially have multiple users in that group. So one person in that approver group has to take responsibility for working through the approval process. If you're familiar with Content Server workflows, there's a member accept step, similar thing. So approver 1 will need to come in here. They can take a look at these records and go, yeah, you know what, I'm comfortable accepting responsibility for the approval process. I'm going to click on accept, and that pulls it out of the inbox of all the other approvers in that group and makes approver 1 the singular approver on this package right now. Okay, so up top, we see the instructions that we sent out that we configured in the package. The 30 days that I had 2 asterisks around is now bold. Here's my hyperlinks to my retention policy or classification module. And here's a link to the records office for the organization. I'm informed when it's due, and the fact that I have 76 objects to approve is shown to me, and so on. We'll get to the rest. So initially, as the first approver, all 76 items come up for pending. I am then, as an approver, able to, choose these records and go, yep, this one here is approved for delete. And if you remember, here's where that button customization comes in. Rather than saying approve and reject and approve for destruction, I now have approve delete and reject deletion. So this is where you can customize the interface to really inform the user that they know what they're doing. When I click approve, I am approving the deletion of this object, as opposed to if it was maybe potentially being archived. So I can click approve. We will take that item out of the pending items tab and move it over to our delete tab. Same thing with reject. If I know this one's available for rejection, I can click on the reject deletion. And in this case, I get a pop-up, because when objects are rejected, you should typically provide a valid reason for it. And so I've made that mandatory in RDA, and this drop-down is customizable. So maybe there's a legal hold on here, and this should be legal hold 001. and reject the deletion. And then we move it out of pendings and into reject deletion. Now, the advantage of having this tabbed system in RDA is it allows your users to walk away from their approval process, maybe close down Content Server, come back tomorrow, and pick up exactly where they left off. In traditional approval process with Content Server, particularly if you are the secondary approver, you may not know which ones you have worked on, because if you maintain approval state, which means if the first approver approves everything and you're the second one, it shows up as already approved, it doesn't keep track of the ones that you've already reviewed. So you would literally have to take a note somewhere to go, oh, I've left off on page 3, record 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I should pick up from there on. With the tabs, it's very easy. I come back tomorrow, I have these 74 items that I need to work on, and I can just work through my process. A couple of other features for the approvers. We can, again, use facets on the left-hand side to facilitate bulk approving or bulk rejecting of our items. And again, all of these facets are dynamically built based on the metadata that is found on your objects. So for example, if I knew that there was a pending legal case for Acme Corp and all of their documents should be held, I could filter on Acme Corp here on the left. RDA will filter on that value. I select them all and I go reject deletion, whoops, legal hold, and it should be hold 001, reject deletion, and I'll bulk delete all of those Acme Corp documents and move them over into the reject deletion tab. And you could do that with physical items, specific document types, and so on. Now, realistically, oftentimes the information that we can present on the screen is not going to be enough information for an approver to make a determination whether that record should be approved or deleted. We have a limited amount of screen real estate to work with. So we're showing the location because often location will provide a very good business context of what the information is about. So you hover over it and you see the complete folder structure. We're showing you, if it's a physical object, the unique ID, the classification, its current status date, and a calculated date. But in reality, that's probably not going to be enough. You may want to take a look at some of the metadata. So to facilitate that, we've created this more information icon that is going to help streamline the viewing of all of that metadata. So when you click on the I button, we see that we show you the name of the document, the owner and owner group might be valuable, as well as the full location. We summarize the RM classification or the records detail tab and the description as well. But what about our categories? So if you remember on these objects, we had 3 categories. We had department, approvers, and I think business unit or something like that. If I were to use traditional content server in this approval process, I would have to click on the object, go to the categories tab, and click on each individual category to see the metadata for each individual category. With RDA, what we'll do is we'll just click on View Categories, and we'll pop up a new window, and we see the 3 categories that are applied to this object. So we see company name, department, and our approvers. But if this was a physical object, maybe there's some physical object attributes that are important. So if I click on View Specific, pops up another box, and I can see all the important information from the specific tab. Now, this is an electronic document, so it's not valuable at this point, but we do have physical items returned here. What about the records detail? Again, there could be additional information that might be found valuable, so we'll pop open another box for that as well. Now, here, the user has access to the majority of the information, metadata, that are captured for this record directly in front of their face. And with one click, they can approve the destruction of this document or reject it. So I'm going to do that now. But what you'll see is if we keep a look at the document name is Stark Industries 2022. When I click on approve, in the background is going to move it to the approve tab, but all of these windows are going to update with the next object that they need to approve. So there's no more clicking around for each single object. You just review your metadata. Yep, looks good. Click approve. RDA will move it in the background. It'll fetch the next one in a list, and you can review it. And you go, okay, wait a minute. This information is not right. There's something wrong with it. I'm going to reject the deletion of it. And so I can reject and say this had a wrong class. Reject it, and then it'll go grab the next one. So basically, in one click, a user can review all of their information and approve or reject those items. So again, making it as easy as possible for our end users to get these approvals done, because oftentimes it is a struggle for organizations to convince their users to sit down and go through these records to approve or reject. Okay. So to get to conclusion of this whole process, I am going to show you two more things. I am going to show you a feedback, and then I'm just going to bulk approve everything to get the process moving forward. So as an approver, sometimes you're not sure if something should be deleted. So potentially, if I wanted some information on these records from a colleague of mine, I can request feedback. So I do that by selecting my objects, clicking the request feedback, and then I can choose a user for feedback. And so I'll choose 02 for this instance. Click OK. And those items get moved to our request feedback. So I have 5 items that I sent out to a colleague for review, and they're going to get a notification saying, hey, you have a feedback request that you need to work on, and here's the package. Now, I'm not going to log in as user 02 because the interface is identical and the process is identical to what we've seen for an improver. The only difference is they don't have the feedback request tab. So we don't allow a feedback user to request feedback and so on and keep passing the buck down. But what this does is you could send it out to multiple people at one time if you wanted. So you can have 5 people in here, and all you're doing is asking for a recommendation. So when these feedback users submit their package and maybe they say approve or delete, you don't necessarily need to accept those recommendations, because potentially they go, I want to reject this record, and the reason is I like the contents of it. I think it's fun to read. Well, that's not a valid reason organizationally to retain a document past its legal retention. So you may want to override their recommendation. So their recommendations will show up here under a column and summarized here. And so potentially if you see everyone approving deletion and you look at the reasons and you go, okay, well, that's great. I'm going to go ahead and agree with these people or disagree with them. I can move them straight to deletion and we're done with our feedback. Okay, so the last little bit for an approver, let's just kick this off, make it easier on ourselves. We are going to bulk approve the remaining 52 items so we can see what we need to do for the final step in the records manager. So I will select all 25, and then select all across all pages and approve delete. So RDA knows that you've reviewed all of these. You could say no and then come back tomorrow if you want to and change your mind, move some of the rejected into approve or vice versa. But we'll just go ahead and mark it as complete. And we are done. So let's log in as our records manager to take a look at the next step. So we will log in as our admin user, which I use as my records manager. And I will get a notification as a records manager that a package has been complete, and I can go in here and take a look at them if I need to. So under an initiated tab, here's the package, and I can see that it's ready for processing. So that means I've received all my approvals. Now, when I go in here, I'm going to see a little bit of a different interface. I see the instructions that I've sent along with it. I see the approvers, the fact that they're done and when they completed the package. Now we have a new tab in a completed package is something called unreviewed items. Basically, what happens is there's some configuration settings that we can automatically move it along the review state when time expires. But when that happens, there's a potential that some items don't get reviewed. And so if that scenario occurs, they'll show up here for the records manager to deal with, whether we send it out in a new package or, contact the end users, whatever. But what we're really looking at here is we have approved items at 60 and our rejected items at 16. So the approved items, click on that tab. Sorry, the server is a little slow this morning. We can see all the items that got approved. We can look at all of the approval states. If we had multiple approvers, we can see each approver and what their approval state was on it. And we can also take bulk actions on these objects if we want. If you remember, a disposition search isn't always about deletion. So maybe you were getting approval to change the status. So directly from RDA, you can select them and go, well, I want to update the records management metadata on these objects, and we'll pop open the window and you can change your records management metadata. I won't do that because it'll affect my disposition searches. But basically, you can also override an approval state. So potentially a user had emailed you and saying, oh no, I've accidentally approved those records. They should have been deleted or should have been rejected, sorry. Can you override it? So it just saves the step of having to send a package out, the approver rejecting them. You can just, as a records manager, override the approval state here. Same thing with reject and deletion. You can, objects that have been rejected, typically there's something that needs to be done to them, potentially a legal hold, as in these examples here, legal holds. So directly from RDA, you can apply holds to it, or override or bulk update metadata. So if you were using traditional content server, it's going to be a little bit more involved. You're going to have to collect these objects into a collection and then go to the collection and then perform your bulk actions. So we allow you to do it right from the RDA interface, cutting down the extra steps that you would use from the traditional content server review process. Okay. So if I'm satisfied, if I've applied my holds and I'm ready to delete my 60 objects or ready to process them, the final step that a records manager needs to do is to go to the snapshot and process these items. So I've just quickly jumped to the snapshot to show you what it looks like. The first thing you'll notice is that those bars at the top of the screen are missing. So we've replaced that with a table showing you the RDA packages that you've built using this snapshot. So what we do next is we see the two packages that we've built off of this snapshot, but only one has a checkbox, and that's because it is the one that's ready for processing. And what we want to do is we want to reconcile all your approvals in RDA into the snapshot. And all you do there is click on the approval box, and we suck in all of your approval states into the package. And all you have to do now is perform actions, and Content Server will do whatever action you've set up on your RSI, which is destroy in this case. So what I'm going to do next is I'm not going to process these items because I don't want to delete my records. I'm going to reset the bar and we are going to show you the automated process. So let's go back to my RDA workspace. And we are going to recall. So recall is another feature that if we potentially sent a package out incorrectly, you can just pull it back without having to delete it and recreate it all. And then I am going to delete my 2 RDA packages and show you the automation. Okay. All right, so I have no pending, no initiated, and we can close that tab. We will go back to our disposition search. Let's open that. Clear out our snapshots, and on a disposition search, we have a new setting or settings under the menu item. RDA disposition review. We're going to turn on auto generate. So this setting here means that when the disposition snap search is completed, it will automatically kick off the building of the work package. We're going to automatically initiate it, and we're setting the security override to yes. But under the approvers, this is where we're telling RDA how to slice and dice our package for us. So if you remember, I have an attribute on there that captures who the first and secondary approvers should be. And so it'll look at those values and build the unique set of records that should be placed into the package, and then slice and dice it and then send it out to the appropriate users. We won't auto process, we'll just save this. And what I will do is I will kick off this disposition search. And all I need to do next is come over here, I'll refresh the page. I'm just waiting for the disposition search to finish. And now you can see that I got 2 initiated RDA packages, Fin1 and Fin2. And if you notice who our approvers are, the first one for 45 records, which aligns with the first set that we excluded, is our accounts receivable approvers, and the accounts payable is now 77 because I did add that extra record in. So if we take a look at Fin2, these are the exact same records that we manually sliced and diced and sent out for review just moments earlier. So with this feature, you can completely automate your review cycle in Content Server. You set up your disposition searches on a schedule. So Content Server will automatically search for you, say, on a quarterly basis. RDA will automatically build the packages based on whatever criteria you've told it to slice and dice. It will automatically send it out for review. And then if you want, when it comes back, all approved items will automatically process based on whatever the default action on those items. So that cycle can just continue completely automated. And then all you need to do as a records manager is worried about things that get rejected or things that are the exception case, the unreviewed items, because potentially of some configuration settings. So that's the magic behind it all. So I know I have 10 more minutes. I'm just going to show you a little teaser here, and then we'll open it up for questions. So as you notice, this is a completely integrated module with Content Server. So users never notice anything. It's traditional Content Server UI. We are at OpenText World, Enterprise World this October, are releasing a new version of RDA. And so this version of RDA sits outside. It is a web app, and we use web services to integrate with Content Server that allows the user to experience a much more easy to use, familiar, comfortable interface, as well as providing some nice features for some records managers. So this is just a teaser The functionality that we've just walked through is in here as well. But if you want some more details and you're attending the conference, please stop by the booth and we'll show it off. So here you go. This is the dashboard that a records manager would see. We're collecting a lot more stats that you can report on, that you could report back to senior management to show how much disk space you're saving, how long our review cycles are taking. Users have the ability to change between dark and light systems. You can build actually RDA disposition searches in here as well. And oftentimes, if traditional content server disposition searches don't allow you to use certain metadata, for example, if you use something called a table key lookup, that is a date value, you cannot build a disposition search using that field in Content Server. With this version of RDA, which we refer to as RDA 4.0, you can, because what we can do is synchronize the information that you have that you want to run your Content Server disposition search again, and build a disposition search directly within this app, and then go through the review process and then reconcile that information back. So big leap forward in what we can do in this interface and the information that we can provide to the records managers to support their programs and to facilitate their disposition approvals. All right, so I will leave it at that, and we can open up the floor to questions.
Thanks, Rob. That was a great presentation and great teaser for the new RDA release. For those of you attending OpenText World as well, let me know, and I can also send you an invitation to a reception on the evening of the 12th at the Rock House in Las Vegas. For those of you who may be working with multilingual content, we also have a module called the OpenText Translator for Content Suite. I put in chat there. There is an on-demand session for that particular module if you're looking to add multilingual metadata to your OpenText Records Management. I'll also put a link here to our OpenText Records Management user group on LinkedIn. We've been building that with several other partners that are in the OpenText Record Management sphere. So please take some time to go through that. And of course, a link for our OT SolEx Partners network. If you're not part of that network, please feel free to join our community and engage with the other 9 partners in our group. And of course, if you have any other questions about this module and you didn't want to ask any questions during here, you can please reach out to myself. You will receive a link to the recorded session as well after we've compiled all the recorded sessions. So if there's no other questions, thank you very much for attending our presentation this morning. Up next at 9 o'clock, Vilt is presenting. If you want to add that particular session to your agenda, I put a link on there as well. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day and enjoy the rest of the expo.